Welcome to the Creative Condition Podcast, the show where I, Ben Talon, illustrator and writer, invite people from the creative industry and far beyond to share their story of creativity. Both the nature and the nurture, the chaos and the calm. Creativity is a fundamental pillar of human happiness, something I'm increasingly fascinated by and so often misunderstood. So little by little, I hope to build an archive of fascinating stories, experiences and tips to help you maximise yours. The show is supported by Illustration X. Go and take a look at their incredible global range of illustration and animation portfolios now at illustrationx.com. If you like the music for the show, go and listen to Dirty Freud over on Spotify and all good music platforms now. Today I'm joined by Phaidon creative director Julia Hasting. It's the centenary year of the art book publisher Phaidon, and we're going to talk about all that lovely design and all those beautiful books that Julia's worked on. We're going to get into the art of collaboration, all the things a creative director at a book publisher has to manage, and of course the broad range of books she's worked on. Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Creative Condition. I am Ben Talon, your host. How are you? I hope you're well. I hope you're feeling good. It's wet and miserable and autumnal outside, and those leaves are beautiful colours, so there are upsides. I hope you're feeling creative. What have you been up to? Tell me. Hit me up. hello@bentalon.com on the email. Today I'm joined by Phaidon's creative director, Julia Hasting. Julia joins me from Zurich in Switzerland, and we're going to talk about her long-standing career. Whole body of impressive work. Julia has worked on the wonderful drawing anthologies, the Vitamin series, Vitamin D2, D3, fantastic standout titles. She's worked on Japan, the cookbook, Wa, the essence of Japanese design, Bread is Gold, book about bread. It's an incredible range of books. It's a challenging role. We're going to get into the nuances of that. We're going to talk about the amount of people that Julia has to work with and satisfy the requirements now as we're into a very much digital age. So not just setting things up for print, but designing book covers that also work for social media thumbnails and what challenges that poses. We're going to talk about the future of print design because, as we know, we're into a lot of automation now with artificial intelligence, and what does that mean for the print book? What is its place in our cultural horizons? This one was a real thrill for me to get into. I'm a big art book nerd. I mean, anyone coming out of university, specifically in arts degrees in illustration and design, around the time that I graduated and before, so 2006, had to come away with a respectable book collection. You know, that first studio, that first role, you have to have a nice pile of books ready and at your disposal for inspiration, and to meet the person behind the ideas and the design was a thrill. So I was very quick to accept this one. I hope you will enjoy this one too. It's a strong one. Big thank you to the supporters of the show, illustrationx.com. Check out their global range of illustration and animation portfolios. A little bit about the Kickstarter. So there's a brand new Creative Condition book. I finally got it written, edited by David Woods Hale, my long-term editor. I'm very proud of this body of work, and I've been pulling in various interview excerpts from guests far and wide from this podcast, people who I've interviewed specifically for the book. It's a labour of love. It's my statement of intent moving forward, because I think the elevation of creativity in our society is going to be really important if we are to meet the challenge of the problems we face. If we can solve those problems, it's going to need creativity. So I'm talking about the climate crisis. I'm talking about, what the world looks like moving forward with all the division that's been ramped up by partisan political agenda. There's a lot of ugliness out there at the moment, and I think that a lot of healing is going to come from us coming together and feeling energized about the world we're in and recognizing what we can make, what we can do to make that change. So that's what this book is about. It means a lot to me. It's a personal labour of love. I've done this now for 10 years. The podcast has been going for 7, but I've been interviewing people for longer than that. So anyone who's listened to this show at any point will know exactly what that means to me. So a big thank you to anyone who has got behind the Kickstarter and backed me so far. We are now up to halfway of my funding goal, which is incredible. It's only been going a week. I hope you will support it. It's going to get the book funded. It's going to mean I can do the initial print run and distribution and start to get this book out to the people who can benefit from it the most, to elevate their creativity, to help them understand and embrace what their self-expression looks like, because we need that for the next generation of people. So thank you for everyone who's contributed so far. It's been a wild ride. I hope you'll jump on that. And without further ado, let's get to this conversation with Julia Hasting of Phaidon.
Well, so I'm German. I grew up in northern Germany, in the countryside, actually. And I think I was quite, maybe looking back, very influenced by the kids' books that I read at the time that my parents gave me. And most importantly, they were by Tommy Ungerer. And I think also interpreting it now, I think I was heavily influenced by him in terms of these little rules that he broke in the illustrations, like unexpected things that come into the pace of the book. Like, for example, I remember in The Beast of Monsieur Racine that there is a scene of care suddenly, and there's a frame around the illustration, but like a drawn line, but it's broken and it's actually dripping something. And this kind of little elements that are against the rules, I really love them, and I like to find them. And also, of course, everybody's favorite Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak, for example. Looking at it again with my own children, I realized how much it's actually planned out, the way that the frame grows bigger when he escapes from the real life into this fantasy world of the beasts, and the horizon opens up and he goes out into the night, and it's kind of totally planned through, which you don't notice as a child, but I guess it was quite influential. I don't know, I think nowadays I always try in my layouts to have definitely strict rules, but then I also break them and bring some more human element into them, even if it's done typographically or like have a grid, but there is also an exception to it, so that I don't know. I thought about this recently by chance.
There's something beautiful.
So I drew a lot, I sketched a lot, but I didn't know that I would once design books. Of course not.
There's something beautiful that you hit on there with the, that thing of, as a child, we don't consume these things with any logic or analysis skills. It's very pure, it's very playful, and it's very, very curious. And yet, if the job is done well, the message will still resonate on a very primal level, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Then in adulthood, particularly in a line of work like yours, we then get to look back and suddenly understand why it made us feel a certain way, and perhaps how much that was a conscious decision.
Yeah.
That's very, very foundational.
There's a real choreography to these books and these intentional disruptors, I think. So that was nice to detect later.
And did you have a kind of mazy path, or did you what was the point that you encountered design in a kind of conscious, intentional way?
Okay. Yeah, so actually, after school, I knew I wanted to do something with art, because that was my strength, to always draw, sketch, paint, whatever. And I wasn't so clear about the exact direction. So first I applied for fine arts, but then found out while I was preparing a portfolio that this is actually probably more called graphic design or design. And also I was then actually very much still influenced by these books, wanted to become a children's book illustrator and be an author later. And so I applied for graphic design and then studied graphic design first in Kassel in Germany, and then shortly after in Karlsruhe in a newly founded school, which was absolutely brilliant. And there I really then learned and understood what graphic design encounters and loved all the elements of it. And special was really in the school that our professor, Gunther Rambo, famous German poster designer, he was really good in introducing us to the real world. And we were actually involved in real projects from the very first days. Like we did a wonderful book for the door handle producer FSB, Franz Schneider-Brake, who had previously worked with Otto Eicher on their publications. And so we had the privilege to design a book for them after he passed away, which was really amazing and influential to be working on. I mean, influential for me on how I then, what I learned in doing this project. And then also in all our semester breaks as a little group of students, we were always working on real book designs already, because the school, the Hochschule für Gestaltung Karlsruhe, was closely connected to the Media Art Center in Karlsruhe next door, like a museum. And so there was actually jobs to do, and we designed books. And so very early on, already still while I was studying, I went to printers. I learned by doing this on the side, which was, I guess, very helpful when I then finished studying and showed up in London, to not really knowing what I would do. But then I met via Ellen Fletcher, I met Phaidon, and that's how it all started. And I designed my first book for Phaidon.
It's funny, isn't it? But there's, I've talked to so many people now in this capacity, and I don't know too many people that had a straight line journey into where they are. And I guess that what I've been writing about in my own book, The Creative Condition, is that the need to spend time with yourself and understand and trust and love that inner person, because that's what gives you the feelings that become the compass and indicate. And it sounds like you also have a very organic journey, and the access to the book printers and these things that have to have a degree of luck and chance that are there for us. It's trusting the feeling that we get when we come to that. Well, did you feel passionate about books quite quick when you began to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because I think so, very much so, because a book, the way I see it and approach it, has so many layers to it, and it kind of encompasses a lot of the subject that you have in the field of graphic design. So it is an object, it's an overall object. So I completely connected all the elements. So you have to design the cover that connects with the interior, with the typography, with the materiality, with the subject matter, first of all. But in a way, you have a lot of elements in there. Cover is, you think about that in a similar way as you would set up a poster design. You have to deal with fine typography for the layout. And so it has so many levels that I think I really loved it. And especially if I have the opportunity to really make it an overall designed object. So we never design books, I just pick an image and put it on the cover, but it's always an overall conceptual thinking behind these designs in themselves. So it has a lot of opportunity, a book design, if you really approach it in this way. So of course I love designing posters as well, and I did some identities as well before I was heavily involved with Phaidon, and sometimes did them still at the side, but it's very beautiful to design a book, and it's there to last, and it is nice to see it then in the bookshops, and that people actually have an emotional attachment to books much more than to other designed pieces of graphic design, like identities. And it's emotional. It's something that you want and connect to, and I do connect to them. So it is.
Very much so. I think there's a permanence about them, and they take on different lives over the years. Even just
personality.
Yeah, completely. I mean, there's the episode I just put out today was with Stefan Sagmeister, and his new book for Phaidon, Now Is Better, is wonderful. But as part of that process, I pulled out a book called Handwritten, which is an old compendium of handwritten typefaces that I had right back from studying, going back nearly 20 years now. And to look at that's the first time I encountered Stefan's work, was a poster that was included in the book. And just, again, that personal journey for me, just to come that distance and to get to talk to Stefan, but also what's happened in between. There's so many beautiful personal layers to a book.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, especially also if you include as a designer some hand-made elements, which I also love doing. I mean, you cannot do it all the time and it's not always appropriate, but I've done it whenever it was possible. On vitamin D3, for example, a book about contemporary drawing, I made a drawing for the cover and I put hand-drawn elements instead of paragraph breaks. And so I love doing that, like interrupt, but also like put something that is handmade into them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the classic thing, isn't it, of knowing the rules before you can break them. And I think that's
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I totally feel like that.
and then it's, you have the trust that you've made a decision based on the idea and the creative and what the book has to communicate.
Yeah, completely.
What was it that Phaidon's, where were you at when Phaidon picked you up, and what was the dynamic of that, getting that role?
It was really a little bit a coincidence because I didn't really know whether I wanted to be in London, but I went there to meet a few design studios after I finished studying, and also met with Alan Fletcher, who was as a freelance consultant, art director for Phaidon. Once a week he came to Phaidon and oversaw their design processes in a design meeting. And when I met him and he saw my portfolio, and it was amazing to be with him and to talk with him, he said, "Oh, do you want to do a book for Phaidon?" And I said, "Sure." And so he introduced me to the publisher at the time, and that's how it started. And so, quite quickly, actually, I was involved in more books. I at first thought I would only stay for 3 months, work on one book and go back to I don't know where and start my own studio. Actually, I wanted to do that. But then I got kind of hooked, and because I had such wonderful other projects to work on, I was working on this book Fresh Cream at the time, and I could really explore and propose what I believed in, and it was accepted. And I think the publisher at the time really noticed that the designs sold the book very well. So I could do unusual production treatments, such as this Fresh Cream was packaged in an inflatable bubble, and it was a big success. It was almost like an exhibition in a book in that sense, in its own time capsule, and people kept one in the bubble and bought a second to open. So that was good. And so it was a very good collaboration. And then he asked me to whether I wanted to be art director in New York in his newly founded office there. And initially the publishing house was just in London. And I said yes. And then that's how I stayed, and I'm still working. And at the moment, since years now, I'm the creative director. So I oversee all the designs. I work together with the publishers, of course, and the editorial teams. We have weekly, very intense design meetings, which we hold over Zoom because it's London, New York. I'm in Zurich, sometimes Paris joins, where we also have an office. But we really discuss in depth the designs that come in. And previous to that, I will have appointed designers that fit a certain book. Then work with them, and then we give feedback of our mutual feedback to the designers if there are any changes necessary. And some of the books I also design myself still, and that's of course what I love the very most. Is to get back to focusing on something and creating myself, which works so well here because I'm basically alone in my atelier. Even though if I have hour-long meetings with the whole team after one click on the mouse, with the mouse, I'm alone again, which is super good, and I can concentrate and I can design, and I love that part. And I'm not sure. I think I forgot to say something now, but
So, and in terms of your decisions to design books yourself, is that a decision that's made entirely what's right for the book? Is it do you get some degree of, I love the look of this, I want to do this? So
I'm very lucky. I can, of course, put myself forward as well, and also because I only do that when it makes sense, when always in discussion with the publishers, Deb Aronson and Emilia Terrani, we decide who's designing what. But yes, I can say, for example, I said I would love to design the Alva and eine Alto book, or the Andy Warhol catalog resume, or I don't know. I have also certain series going, like the vitamin series that I often do. But yeah, I can say I would love to design the Paul Smith book, and if they also agree that it's a good match, we go for it. But yeah, I very much think about, have a long list of collaborators, designer collaborators, international, so they are all also all over the world, which is so nice. And then I really agonize sometimes quite long about who's getting what job, or whom will I ask, and what's the good fit. And it's very nice. We have long-lasting, close relationships with our graphic designers that we work with. So it's working well, and it's exciting to always add new designers to that list as well. And
yeah, because I mean, it must be such an invested process, given the the gravity and the scope of some of the books that you work on.
It's very intense sometimes, and also it's sometimes complicated because there's so many people involved. It's us, they're the publishers, the CEO. We have to meet a certain audience, and then there's of course the artists behind it, and the authors, and everybody in the end has to be happy with it. And we still want to put out the absolute best product. So it's sometimes complicated, but it's an interesting challenge.
And is there a healthy ecosystem in terms of everyone's got the freedom to say what they feel is right for the book, and push and pull and all the things? Because let's face it, any good design project, there must be a great degree of collaboration and negotiation.
Absolutely, I would say so. It is, of course, sometimes gets complicated, and after all, our authors have to be happy, and the artists, but also we have to sell this book, and I need to be able to stand behind it for the design. So it can become complicated, but I think, yes, we really have good discussion, and we also try that our designers can be proud about their books in the end. So it is complicated sometimes, I have to say that.
It's safe to say, we're talking now in the 100th year of Phaidon as a publisher, which is incredible, and that's such a legacy also. Is that, I guess that would that come with a balance of, is there pressure that comes from the prestige and the reputation to maintain that with every project, or is that a luxury and a privilege?
I don't feel it as a pressure. I think it's a privilege, and I think it's a nice challenge. That's how I challenge myself. I always want these books to still look great, and I don't want to compromise too much. And of course we have to sometimes, because of budget reasons or because of time limits. And then there is always disappointment, not always, but a lot as well. But then you have to kind of adapt and find a great compromise, which is also a creative challenge, like, so for example, you wanted the colored edging for the book, and now, sorry, you can't have it because there's not enough time in the printing schedule, and it will not dry on time, and you can't have it, or it's too expensive or whatnot. And then you have to rethink slightly, not completely, but find still the best solution. And it's always constant creative challenge. I mean, even if the concept is approved sometimes. And this is also what I enjoy, is that there are so many stages to a book design. There's first you really have to inform yourself about the subject and do research, and then you come up with the concept and have to present it in the right way so everybody understands it and can envision the project. And once that's approved, which can take sometimes longer and sometimes it's immediate that it's approved, then there is the whole production process starting and the layout process on the side. But we also immediately start testing for the materials, the printing processes. So it stays interesting. And to the point where in the end, it also has to look good, even if the book isn't even printing yet, but it has to already be there for the sales force to put it out and to talk about it. So you have to do amazing renderings or present the book in the right light, even though it's not there yet. So you have maybe tests and off covers, but not yet the real book. So it's there's a real life to it until it really comes out.
I mean, there's so many moving parts going on there. It would be easy to be fooled, perhaps, from an inexperienced standpoint, to look at one book and go, it's one book, I get to sit and design all these pages. But actually, even just in terms of the financial creativity that must have to be deployed from what you said there, budget constraints and time scales, and so many variables at all times in your role, by the sound of it. That takes a certain personality and resilience that I guess you would have built up throughout the course of your time with Phaidon.
But it is always there, this challenge and the change and the budgets, but I don't know, it's kind of, I guess I have a lot of experience now over the years, and you have to just stay calm and find a good solution, and most of the time there is. So I would just take it as a challenge, a creative challenge.
Of course. And I remember I interviewed Annie Atkins, who the film, her work. And
I worked with her on the book, and kind of in the end did the layout for the book, because we were doing
Which one was that for?
Sorry?
For Annie's book.
So I did the layout for her book. Of course, it's all her work in there, but the typography and so on, I worked closely with her on her book at the time.
I didn't know that. But the similarity that I see in Annie's work and yours is I always remember, not too long before I got the chance to interview Annie, I'd done a bit of art direction work on a zero to micro budget independent film in Manchester. And by the end of the project, there were a lot of pleasures, but I knew this wasn't for me. I knew that I needed a more specialized role where I applied my vision, mood. And that was emphatically confirmed when I sat in on Annie's workshop in Dublin.
You did great.
Before we talked for the podcast. And when she explained, the sheer pressures and all the moving parts in that role to please the actors, to work with different directors and their own quirks, it gave me so much admiration for Annie's ability to do all of that with such style and such, rigor. And it's much the same with you. It kind of melts my brain if I think of all the things, and having to do that myself, it would not be right for me.
And it is challenging. So that's why it's so wonderful that I can also have the other side of the job that is also so important, that I still can design books, and then it's really, I can focus, and it's a good balance, I would say. A very nice one.
And how about in your own spare time in your own life? Do you still hover in bookshops, and are you? You've tried,
I do, but I guess I also hover all over and get inspiration also from non-book items, which is important, because you already in the job I see a lot now, of course, and also the constant research I'm doing also to find the right people and so on. So I see a lot, and I'm involved in the Alliance Graphique Internationale and in other platforms, and in juries sometimes. So I see a lot. So sometimes I also want to see something that isn't graphic designers. I do. I look at a lot of the books and move around in bookshops and other museums, and I don't know. But also get inspired sometimes by everyday items, I would say.
I think it's absolutely crucial, and it's something I always preach to. If I ever do guest lecturing, I can, constantly preach the same thing that my lecturers preached to me, which was to just fill your head with the broadest range of stimulus.
However, I have to say it is quite a luxury. Sorry, my voice. Actually, I get also, of course, very much inspired each time by the subject matter that I'm dealing with for each book. So it's either the work of an artist or the work of a chef sometimes, or, and so this always very much informs my design. I think much more than thinking, I've seen a book like that. I think that doesn't happen. It's more, I deal with, for example, like I worked on a book for Bruce Nauman, and I was heavily inspired by his works then, and by the inside studio photography that I saw for the first time how his studio looks like. So that heavily influenced the cover design and the elements I put in the typography. So I think this is where I really look close, and where each time I'm inspired, whoever the subject is, this is what is the important influence for the creation of the book. And also when I do the art direction, I think it's the same process.
Yeah, the Jacques Deroy book, for example. I mean, when we're talking Japan and design, that's a whole world in its own right, which is incredible, but just so, informed by the culture that how could you not go broader than the design itself?
Yeah, that was, of course, I mean, I really did a lot of research, but again, I had all these amazing objects that are in the book from ancient times until today, all Japanese objects, which were actually organized by material in this book. So that was I could pick up on so many materials and shapes and forms. So it was, that was one of the nicest books to work on, of course, that I could use the real Japanese binding, even though our book is mass produced, and I proposed that and it was possible, and the folded pages, and then the lacquer on the cover, and the emboss, deboss, and all that. It was really great to find out that this was possible, because sometimes I propose things and I kind of fear already this might go a little bit too far for mass production. And so I have a close collaboration, of course, with our production team at Phaidon that is amazing, and tries hard to make these things work.
Yes, indeed. And it's a brilliant book cover. I wanted to touch upon that just a little bit, because as an author and an illustrator myself, it's some of my most challenging things have been designing my own book covers. And I went from very early, and this wasn't just my own, but I do bits for Bloomsbury Design too. And I wanted to reinvent the wheel every time when I started out, like you do when you're young and hungry. And not that I'm not hungry now, but now I understand the functionality and the way that a book cover has to capture the mood and the essence of a book, and not necessarily tell the entire story.
That's the thing. It is always an emotional reaction to the subject matter, that what you put out as the cover design, or that's how I see it, at least. It's an emotional interpretation. It's not putting something on. It's really an emotional interpretation. And maybe I think also intuition is key. So, I mean, I look back, and many times the first intuitive direction I choose for a cover design, often I go back to my first sketch, it's kind of, because it is this emotional reaction, I guess, that the intuition is then also right. And you do many more versions, but then it's like, no, the first one was the best. So I put that forward.
Yeah, I have these very trusted, vastly more experienced creative directors in my network who I'm good friends with. And there's about 4 or 5 who I know will be as brutal as I need them to be. And when I reach a certain point with book covers, I send the work to them and kind of brace. And it's all invariably will always be, no, strip it back to where it was. It's yeah, and I love that.
It's true. Yeah.
And so how many books, for example, will you work on at any given time?
Oh, that varies a bit, but I would say it really depends. Some are massive projects, so I have fewer at one time together. And sometimes there's also others coming on top just because of the process that we work, but it varies between 3 and 6 and 7 in a season. We publish, I think, it also varies around 40 a season. And so in that range, I design myself, but it so depends always what's on the list and what's right and how busy I am. It varies a little bit, but I try to do as many as I can. And
I imagine that you must have to be incredibly organized to maintain your creativity in the midst of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in that sense, really, as I said, the setup really helps, that I have the peace and quiet. and because these meetings are sometimes very intense and long, and it's also is so many projects that it's quite tiring to jump from one to the next to the next, and each time you have to quickly recall what's important here and where were we, and it's really multitasking in these meetings. But I don't know, I guess I'm organized, but I'm not someone that is like filing and but I guess in my head I can find organization very useful. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also a lot of experience. I don't know, I know that in 20 years ago I worked night shifts to achieve what to do these designs, and now it has to work in a certain amount of hours because I also have children, it's like, but and it works because I have the experience. I think I learned not to work night shifts, and only if it's absolutely necessary. Happens rarely, but not on a regular basis.
Yeah. And how did you feel about, there's not a right answer to such a question, but the times we're living in with the digital prominence, I guess is the word. But I think that, in my opinion, it heightens the value of physical books, because I think we're exposed to so much information now, and it's so across so many different systems, that I think there's something wonderful about the curation of a book. And this, so for I think of the D3 book, for example, and I still have, like I said, books from 20 years ago when I was studying that are just these wonderful compendiums of collected works that just save so much stress. If you were to go online and start looking for all of this stuff individually, it would just take so much time, and I think there would be so much less joy in what a book gives you, in that physical experience of sitting down, and everything else fades away.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it proves also these books, we're still selling books, they're still there, we're still making them, luckily, and it proves that people love them and need them and need these objects and to connect to, and not just have everything in digital form on their phone. But yeah, in that sense also, we really try that the books work online as objects. So we really take great care about a rendering, or even better, once the book is there, that we can show the materiality and the three-dimensionality of it, in front, spine, back, looking inside. So it's really important. We really want to also online that they come across as objects. But we have to also, of course, since a long time already, very much keep in mind that they work as thumbnail size online, the covers, because if they don't, then it's a problem, because of course non-platforms are the main seller, or not the main, but a huge part of it. But it's interesting because, again, as a student, I designed a lot of covers, and we were always saying that a lot of posters, and we always said that a poster actually has to work in stamp size, because that's how you see it in the street in the end. So it's a little bit that exercise, that the covers have to have that quality, that they're also really iconic in that size. In the same way as a poster has to just shout loud when it's far away, or a stamp has to do its job in that tiny size, And I like that challenge.
Yeah, it is a good challenge, actually.
But I don't like that. I don't like to compromise. So I love to keep the quality of the materiality, and I don't want to compromise because it has to work online. So it's, again, another challenge,
Yes, I agree. It's a very satisfying outcome when you find something that is still very true and pure to the idea, but does the functional side of things too.
Yeah,
really good. There's I think there's a huge importance in particularly in art books and design books, in terms of opening the door for the next generation. So again, I mentioned several times, during my own studies, we would have these small bookshelves full of collections and anthologies, and it was incredible, because they introduced me to people who were absolutely pivotal in showing me that something could be done a certain way that struck a chord with my personality, or with a cultural thing that was going on. And there's no predicting what that will mean as the years progress. But I think that remains the same, doesn't it? It's still a great way of opening the door to new generations.
I would say so. I would hope so. I think it is. And it's nice that the books that are maybe too expensive for students often come out as paperbacks later, 2 years later or so. And then they're available in the libraries. And I mean, when I studied, we had really this curated library in the room where we were studying, curated by our professor. It was hugely important to have all the important classic books on design there. So I would say it's the same, and you just cannot replace that with digital information only, I would say. And to open the book and also together look at something that you can touch and see really well printed. That's the other thing, that the reproduction is flawed on digital platforms. It's not the right colors. It's on a glowing screen rather than reproducing really, say, the oil paint on the best paper possible for this artwork.
Yeah. And, and again, what a milestone, 100 years, and to have played a significant part in that. And moving forward, what's next? I mean, not so much in terms of what's on the to-do list, but, the times are changing very rapidly all the time at the moment. So
yeah,
I guess like anyone else, it's kind of hold on and see where we are, week to week, month to month.
Yeah, but it's nice to maybe also look back to what was there before and to connect it with the contemporary. So like I love doing that, like going back to very old binding techniques or looks and of Bibles and take references or from old telephone books, like that's interesting, then, and to merge us with contemporary typefaces, and that creates something new. I think this can definitely be one way to look into the future of bookmaking, to really also always look back and connect and merge and so on. I think that works very well.
Yes, no, without a doubt. And, we live at a time when we have access to references from the entirety of human history,
Yeah, exactly.
That is what you make of it. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just, it's a luxury. I guess it's a luxury we have, isn't it?
Yes, hopefully.
Well, I think that covers just about everything, Julia, but that's been fantastic. It's been a joy to hear your story.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Podcast.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what's next. I'll certainly be keeping a keen eye. Thank you so much to Julia Hasting. This has been a joy to talk to her and hear about Phaidon's 100 years, and particularly her tenure as creative director. When you graduate from arts degrees, you dream of talking to people like this in any capacity, let alone professionally, and to get to hear their story and their deepest secrets. So thank you so much to Julia for being so candid about her work and so open, and I think that's going to inspire a lot of people and give a lot of valuable insights. So I hope you enjoyed that today. As I mentioned earlier on in the show, if you want to support the Kickstarter to help me get the Creative Condition book off the ground and realise this project, which is a bit of a dream for me and a labour of love and something I want to do a lot of great work with, then you can help me do that. You can get your credit in the book, you can get your advance copy, you can get a whole host of supporting gifts and prints. Thank you if you've done that so far. It really does mean the world, and I hope you'll consider joining me on this journey. You're already on it if you're listening to the show, so thank you. And any follows and subscriptions and reviews on the podcast platforms that you use to listen to this are very, very valuable, so please take time to do that. It means a lot. Thank you, guys. Hit me up, hello@bentalon.com, or on the social media as ever, and do support the founding sponsor of the show, illustrationx.com, to see all their global range of animators and illustrators. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week and stay creative.